This episode is sponsored by Linode. Linode is offering listeners of this podcast a $20 credit, which is good for 4 free months at their lowest plan. Their plans start at 1 gigabyte of RAM for $5 a month. You can get your servers in any of their 10 data centers, and their high memory plans start at 16 gigabytes. Get a server running in under a minute. They do hourly billing with a monthly cap on all plans and add-on services like backups, node balancers, Longview, etc. VMs for full control, running Docker containers, encrypted disks, VPNs, etc. You can run a private Git server. They provide native SSD storage, 200 gigabit network, and Intel E5 processors. They have 24/7 friendly support, even on holidays, and a 7-day money-back guaranteed. So go check them out at linode.com/rubyrogues. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Ruby Rogues podcast. This week on our panel we have Dave Kimura.
Hey everybody.
David Richards.
Hello.
I'm Charles Max Wood from devchat.tv. I just want to do a quick shout out before we get too far. If you're interested in an Elixir podcast, go to devchat.tv/ElixirMix and support the Indiegogo campaign. We have a special guest this week, and that is Jesus Castello.
Hello.
How are things going?
Great.
Do you want to give us just a brief introduction, who you are, what you're famous for, all that good stuff?
Sure. Well, I have been a developer for many years, and I picked up Ruby 6 years ago, and I thought it was a really cool language. I really enjoyed coding with it. So I did some freelance work, some open source work with it, and then right now I'm focusing teaching Ruby to others.
Yeah, we found you through your Ruby website, and in particular, your performance improvements in Ruby 2.5. So we figured, hey, let's talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So one thing that I'm just going to chime in here with to get us started is back in October, I put on Ruby Dev Summit, and we had Mats come, and he was talking about basically Ruby 3.0, and he was talking about how he wanted to see 3 times speed improvement and a few other things in Ruby 3. And so a lot of these performance improvements are things that we're seeing in Ruby 2.5. And so I was just like, oh, wow, this is showing some of this movement that we wanted to see in Ruby 2.5. Do you want to just give us some context around this particular article you wrote and how you put those benchmarks together?
Yeah, sure. So what I did is I went over, since the performance changes are not documented in the changelog, I had to actually dig into the commit messages for Ruby 2.5. I went through them one by one, and I pulled out the ones that were relevant to performance. And then I read the message, and I did my own, I ran my own benchmarks in my own machine to verify that indeed this is a performance upgrade. And then I post about my own results on my blog.
Awesome. One thing I thought was interesting about these benchmarks is that it starts out with things like string append and prepend, enumerable and things like that, maybe range, min and max. One thing that I thought was interesting there was that these seem like pretty simple things. And yes. When I was starting out, I was like, okay, but what about all the heavy computational stuff? And then I realized that most of what I do in Ruby is web development. And so what it's doing is it's essentially converting stuff into HTML strings and cramming it together. And so a lot of this stuff is stuff that is going to impact my Rails apps.
Right.
So this is free performance, which is the best kind. I love that. Where, one thing I've seen from Ruby version to Ruby version is that they've done really good about not breaking things. Unlike going from a Rails 5.0 app to a Rails 5.1, you're running around the house, like it's on fire, crazy and stuff. But, between Ruby versions, it's pretty stable, They don't do too many deprecations, and it's never anything that doesn't take more than, a few hours maybe fixing your application. I know one of the things that's coming out, and we talked about on a previous episode, was the frozen string literal that's coming at the top of each application or each one of the Ruby files by default. So if you have any kind of mutability that you need to do within strings, then you should set the frozen string literal to false. So, I mean, I think that's like the biggest, like, earth-shattering breaking change that they've had in quite some time. So I'm really happy about it. You know, I should hopefully be able to just go into my apps, throw in Ruby 2.5, and everything just still kind of works. Hopefully.
Yeah, and these little changes add up. It might not seem like much is happening, but they keep adding up version by version of new Ruby versions.
Yep, absolutely. Now, there are a bunch of other changes that are coming in Ruby. I know they posted on GitHub, I don't know what they call it, a blob, I guess, where they posted the news on Ruby 2.5 and the changes since 2.4. One of the ones that I thought was really interesting, and I'm curious to see what all of you think about this, is that they updated the standard library to include bundler and a handful of other things, changes to some of the other libraries, but bundler is just being added to the standard library. And I think that's something that everybody uses, so it makes some sense, but if you keep adding stuff to the standard library, that's more stuff you have to pull in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but, let's be honest with ourselves. Like, what's the first thing that you do after you install Ruby on your computer? You install bundler. I mean, that's just kind of a given.
Yeah. Literally last night, 10 o'clock last night, I've got a project I'm loading up. Very first thing. Oh, yeah, I don't have bundler. Get bundler on this RVM gem set, and then I could start building up everything again.
Wait, you use RVM gem sets? That's like 10 years ago.
Oh, I know. I was on an old setup. Once I set up a machine, I don't tend to touch it again. And this machine has been sitting here for a very long time.
But what if you like dependency hell?
There's nothing wrong with RVM. You people and all of your complaints about it, you can just stuff it. RVM is great.
It is. It's awesome.
Well, it's not worth messing with. Once you've got something, and you're good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm correct. CH Ruby. I changed to CH Ruby because I think it's simple to manage. I don't know. It's just simple. RVM feels like a behemoth, right? Like a big thing. CH Ruby is super simple. It's like the philosophy for Unix tools. The one tool should do one thing well, right?
Right.
I think that's CH Ruby is good at.
Yeah.
So I think it's CH Ruby. We got RVM and RBEMV. Anything else? What are you guys using? So CH Ruby?
I use RVM. I'm too lazy to change. It works. If it ever stops working, then I'll probably switch. But I never get any, issues that make me go, oh, I need something different. So
yeah, as long as you're not using System Ruby, I think we're all okay. No, but I really think that's kind of like a point against, well, what's a better camera? A Nikon, a Canon, a Leica, or whatever. It really comes down to what feels most natural to you, and that's the right answer for you. So whether it's RBM or CH Ruby or RVM, they're all fine choices in my book, and whatever's gonna best help you to just get started programming, go with that.
No, we need a real holy war here. Come on.
I stepped in at once where I was at a new job, new project, and I had a strong opinion about RBM. I liked RBM, and I guess the CTO got offended. I found out later. Created a holy war on my first day of the job.
Nice. Well, it's good to hear. I think we've all done that on one thing or another.
Yep.
But yeah. I just So overall, just bundler being there, it just makes a lot of sense. Of course, what that's really going to do to me is that I'm going to install Ruby 2.4 for an old project, and then I'm going to be like, Why isn't it? Why? Oh yeah, I have to install bundler now.
Yeah. I think for bundler, that's kind of an exception to the rule where that's going to be one of the welcome additions. Whereas if they started adding in natural language processing libraries or a bunch of other stuff that just really made the whole Ruby package heavier, then we would start getting some kickback. But bundler, I think, is a fair one to add in.
Well, they do have under string, they have it listed each grapheme cluster. So, there is some language parsing stuff in there that they're adding in.
Look, man, I'm just trying to prevent the SkyNet, okay?
I love it. I'm curious, as all of you have looked at Ruby 2.5, I mean, what are you seeing there that you're excited that's coming in? I mean, besides the performance improvements and things like that we're sort of getting for free with, use this version now.
I really like the GL self method. Have you seen the GL self method on Kernel? It's very interesting.
No, I didn't see. Oh, yield self, yeah.
Yes. It allows you to, in some cases, it allows you to remove temporary variables. Like you're doing some kind of processing with map, select, inject, right? And then you want to do an if statement on that, for example. And you will need a temporary variable. But with GL self, what it allows you to do is to change that at the end, like a method chain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it passes the object itself into the block as a block argument. So for example, if you do 5.GLself and a block, 5 will be the block argument. That's why it's GLself. It deals the same object. So this is what allows you to change methods without having to use a temporary variable. So I really like that.
I'm trying to think of what like a use case would be for that. Do you have an example?
Yeah, well, the example I gave of saving you the temporary variable, right? Because sometimes you need a temporary variable just to be able to say, if this thing is true, then do this or something else. And with the GL self, you can put the if statement in a block.
Mm-hmm.
And then you use the same object you were working with.
Oh, okay.
Without having to create a temporary variable. I have an actual code example somewhere. Can find that for you.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Would take me a minute to find.
One thing I've really liked about Elixir is that chaining is normal. And so yield self sounds right. I didn't think I'd want to chain a lot of methods until I started chaining a lot of methods and realized it was elegant. It was easy to read my intention. And so being able to keep a single chain together where the output of one becomes the input of the next. And it's just easy to always do that without breaking it up with Jesus is saying with other tools. So that's kind of exciting for me. At least that's becoming my new normal.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what that operator's called.
The pipe operator.
Pipe operator, that's right.
Yeah. So at what point do you realize that, wait, I have 10 things chained together. That's just way too much. I mean, debugging becomes a nightmare if you abuse it. I think, in some small portions, chaining one or two things together is okay because you can kind of read it and expect the output. But by the 6th chained item, you're like, I have no idea what's getting passed in here, and I have no idea what I'm expecting back.
And yeah, we found that in our refactorings as well. We'll do 4 or 5 chain in a chain now with our production code. But beyond that, you start having a high likelihood that you didn't handle an error condition very well. And so chains are good to a point, but they get hard to understand at some point. And they also, if something's going on that gets unhandled and now you're in an untenable state, you need to slow it down and do less.
Yeah. So I've always found, and I know we kind of gotten a little bit off topic here, but if I find myself chaining like 4 or 5 things together, I'll usually move like 2 of those chains over into a private method or something of that class. And then I'll chain just like 2 separate private methods that are very explicit with what they're supposed to do, like the kind of input they're taking and what they're going to do. That way it's a bit less confusing. But
what I find is it's more, how do I put it? So, you have a series of things that you're doing, and you're essentially taking the input from one thing and handing it off to the next thing, with this chaining. And what I find is if it's all pretty simple to follow, it's all one process. It's pretty obvious what's going on. Then that makes sense. But yeah, if you can break it up into 2 larger super steps, I guess, because you have 6 regular steps or 6 things that you chain together. But one is part of one stage and one is part of the other stage. Then, then breaking those 2 things up into their own methods makes a lot of sense. And then you just chain those 2 things together, and it becomes more clear. Okay, I'm capitalizing the names or cleaning up this input or whatever in this stage, and then I'm processing it in the next stage. And initially, usually I wind up writing those as one big long string, chain of things that I'm doing. So yeah.
I posted the yield self example on Skype chat.
Yeah. So what else is coming in Ruby 2.5? I mean, for me, the performance is kind of a big thing. And a lot of these things, I don't know that I'm necessarily going to use them so much as the gems I'm using are going to use them.
Well, we have some changes, like on the top of the news file, we can find these like language changes, and it says something like top level constant lookup remove. And I can explain what that means. What that means is that right now, before Ruby 2.5, you can do something like a string, colon, colon, string, colon, colon, string, colon, colon, integer, colon, colon. You can do like an infinite loop like that of constants. And Ruby 2.5 is removing that because it has no actual use. And on top of that, the explanation that's given to remove this is that it gives you problems with Rails auto-loading system. So that's one thing I found interesting. One of the changes.
I'm curious how much that's going to break. Because I think we do that lookup. I think we rely on that some.
Maybe we find out, I guess.
Yeah.
I know that Matt doesn't like breaking changes. If you watch any of his talks, he always talks about trying to not break old versions of Ruby. He's always concerned about that. So I'm sure he thinks it's true.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, if you're focusing on performance or, how you're going to move forward in specific ways, I mean, there's probably a really good reason for it, and not just, oh, well, we really don't want people to do this, or, there's this gotcha out there for it. Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting how production friendly that is, being willing to keep things as stable as possible.
Yeah.
I mean that's a huge deal. I've heard people complain sometimes about the Ruby world, the Rails world, when we have updating gems, but the actual core standard library is very dependable, I think, and it's worked very well. Especially, I've had experiences with Node. I like Node, but I've had a project where it was a kind of complicated project, and 3 months later I came back and the dependencies were so different. I couldn't recover it. I didn't want to recover it after a day of messing with it. It was just too many breaking changes. So I think they do a pretty good job of that generally.
Yeah, we also see this in other languages where I think it's Python, or I don't remember. It was Python or Perl, but one of them released a version that had enough breaking changes into it where they had an adoption problem getting people to move up. And
yeah, Python 2.7 is still a standard in a lot of places. And they have this weird problem over there at Python too. They have a lot of data science libraries that were written by people like in graduate school, and then they moved on. So you have a lot of old stuff that it's good stuff. It's just nobody's around to maintain it. And that's part of the problem that I've seen in Python.
Yeah.
Ours had that same problem too. I've been in on a meeting where they've had all this old R code, and same thing. A lot of students and professors that built stuff, they based their theses on some R code that they submitted, and then they're gone. They've gone off to do something else, and
right.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah, so having that backward compatibility where things mostly work is really, I think it's something we don't think about because it doesn't smack us in the head.
Yeah, we're lucky.
Yep. The one other thing in the language changes. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the reversing of the log errors. I think that's going to be a welcome change eventually, but I think it's going to mess up so many people initially. Because I'm used to getting a big long error message in my logs, and then just quickly flipping up my mouse wheel to scroll up. Now I'm not going to be, I'm still going to be doing that. I'm like, oh crap, forgot it's at the bottom now. So yeah, it's going to be a welcome change because now I don't have to scroll. So, it should be quicker to develop or trace back something, but it's going to be a little bit of memory muscle reprogramming.
Yeah. So one other thing that's coming in the language is rescue, else, and ensure are going to be allowed in do end blocks. Now, it's not allowed in like the squiggle braces if you're doing blocks, but in the other blocks, it will be allowed. And I was thinking, man, that'll be nice too, because I don't have to put a begin in there and then have another layer of nesting in there.
It'd be interesting to hear how you guys, what's your go-to philosophy on rescue? I used to rescue everything, and then I stopped. And I only use it if I absolutely have to, and I try to architect my way around it. But I'm liking that you can put it in a do end block now. But what do you guys think about that as far as how do you use rescue?
Net HTTP, that's where I use it. Because it freaking throws an exception when it shouldn't. It's not broken. I got a response. I can figure out how to handle it. I don't need to freaking rescue it. Sorry.
Hey guys, this is Eric. Sorry I was not on earlier. I'm a little under the weather. But hey Sus, it's great to meet you, man. As far as rescues go, I'm actually sitting here coding right now, and rescues can be very handy, especially when handling specific errors. For example, I'm working currently with the Twilio API, and the Twilio API depends on those exceptions to be thrown because of the based on the error code that it passes back. You can really handle it well. Also, when you're dealing with Ruby classes that might be a little bit more complex, and you have a base class that basically handles everything, having throwing exceptions, very intentional exceptions in that does make life quite a bit easier. I guess it depends on how you're doing it. I don't have my good microphone with me right now, so you get to deal with my crappy audio. So anyway, I'll stop talking now, but I wanted to add a little bit of input.
Well, I think, especially if you're just starting out, the default go-to is to just do a rescue exception and just like kind of capture everything and then just try to handle it. Instead of, picking up what are the possible errors or something that could get returned here. And I think that's kind of like the pitfall that a lot of people fall into, is that they're like, oh, well, I could just rescue this exception and then just print out a log and then deal with it later. but that doesn't really help you in the long run. It's like you kind of need to capture the specific error, handle that, and then, anything that's raising some other kind of error that you didn't plan for, it's probably going to throw an error 500.
Yeah. I also have seen some people abuse exceptions for too many exceptions where it becomes the whole program is driven by the exceptions instead of them being used to just handle errors. Everything is handled with exceptions. And that's almost like we are back to using GoTo.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think you should know where you're expecting to see the exceptions. And I'm also of the opinion that you shouldn't throw an exception unless you intend for the program to halt because of them. If you're, so if it's feedback, but it's feedback that you're going to handle and you don't think that the program should necessarily halt because of it, then you shouldn't be using exceptions. And that's why I have a big issue with net HTTP, is because they raise exceptions on error states or not found states. And it's, in my opinion, it shouldn't be there because I should be handling those. So anyway. So I like being able to also just put that around that without having to put the begin, like I said, because I think it adds another layer that you have to parse. And then from there, I can wrap my HTTP stuff in do blocks or put a begin in front of it if I'm not using a do end block, and then just handle things properly there. And then I can take it's going to halt my program because it's stupid out. For you, the listeners of Ruby Rogues, Loot Crate is offering an opportunity to save 10% on any new subscription at lootcrate.com. Just enter the promo code BRIDGE10 for 10% savings. Loot Crate is one of my favorite things. Every month I get a box in the mail, costs less than $20, and it comes with all kinds of goodies. I have stuff from, just looking at my shelf, Batman, Spider-Man, Ninja Turtles, Back to the Future, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and much, much more. So if you're a geek, a gamer, anything like that, and you want cool stuff to put around your office, cool t-shirts, comic books, etc., then definitely check out Loot Crate. To save 10% on your new subscription, go to lootcrate.com/Ruby. Again, that's lootcrate.com/Ruby to save 10% on any new subscription. Enter the promo code BRIDGE10 for 10% savings.
How about this change about refinements in Ruby 2.5? It says that refinements take place in string interpolations. So that what means, or at least what I take that to mean, is that you can use refinements inside string interpolation. A string interpolation is just like evaluating code, right? Mm-hmm. So when you call a method that's been defined by a refinement, then before Ruby 2.5, it will not recognize that method, but with Ruby 2.5, it will. So what do you think about that? And does anybody use refinements at all?
I really don't, I'll admit.
Mm-mm.
I mean, I played with them when they first came out, but it's just not a big part of what I wind up doing with Ruby. And I'm probably missing out.
Well, the refinements are, they're similar to active support, right? Where you can add active support-esque functionality directly to your projects. And I see that the value there is additional libraries or gems that you bring in that might utilize that. So I don't ever use that directly, but I'm certain that escape hatch is ideal for gems and libraries that are brought in through applications to add value there. You're probably using it, you just don't realize it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mostly just meant that's not something that I am directly coding into my app. Any other of these features that we want to just dive into here?
So I do have a question. How much of and maybe you guys know this, how much of the new version of Ruby is paving the path to the Ruby 3, the supposedly concurrent version of Ruby? Is there anything in the new version that kind of lends itself to that final switch? I should say, suppose the hopeful switch that we're all waiting for.
Actually, I think there is something about that. I saw about a lot of methods, like IO-related methods, that are now, they now release the GIL, the global interpreter lock, when working. I'm not sure if that's directly towards Ruby 3.0, but it might be one of the moves. Because if you read the news file, there's some methods that say now releases the GBL, which is the global. For example, file stat, file exist, another rbstat using methods release the GBL, which is the global log, the global VM log, global virtual machine log. That's that line. And I think that's a step towards Ruby 3.0 and removing the global log.
Yeah, I'm also aware that they're looking at using some kind of JIT compiler to speed things up too. And so I don't know. I haven't seen anything here that directly speaks to that, but it's definitely interesting to see that might be something too that they can speed up. I think some of the GVL stuff is aiming at that too.
Yeah.
How much of an impact do you think the Ruby version 3 will have as far as maintaining or claiming thought leadership from, for example, Elixir or other more concurrent languages? How much of an impact do you think that'll have on reviving the popularity of Rails?
Things hard to predict, because a lot of the people that are not currently happy with Ruby performance, if that's why they left, will they come back? That's basically the question, right? Or the idea is to make it 3 times faster by Ruby 3.0. We don't know if we are going to achieve that, but I think even if we did that, I don't know if the people that already move on are going to come back. I doubt it.
I think it's hard to know. I think really what it comes down to is there are a lot, in my opinion, a lot of people who have reasons for using Ruby and for not using Ruby. And it essentially comes down to what trade-offs they care about. So, Elixir has a lot of things going for it, but at least for me, I don't find that Elixir is necessarily easier or better in a lot of ways for writing code. But if I really care about the concurrency and the speed, then maybe I would switch. And then in other cases, I just want to get code written fast. And so, the speed of development is something that Ruby does really, really well. And so if I find that my team performs better with Ruby, I think it only impacts the people who are in that weird place where they want both. And the changes in Ruby 3 are going to be enough to get them over whatever performance hurdle they have.
Mm-hmm. I found that in the last 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, that at least 4 or 5 times I've needed to get things done, and speed of development, I grabbed Ruby for that. And they were Elixir projects, they were Python projects, and I grabbed Ruby to solve the problem quickly, and get things done, especially when I need to interactively grok a domain. I'm in there, I'm trying to figure something out and get it done right. maybe if I was thinking about concurrency, I'd already understand the domain and I can architect something else. But if I just want something to work, Ruby's it works.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also something to be said for familiarity, right? So I may be, I may have some Ruby-colored glasses on, so to speak, on some of this because I can just crank stuff out. I don't have to think as much to code in Ruby, and that's probably born as much out of my familiarity with it as it is out of the language and what it offers.
That and other languages suck, right?
Well, I didn't want to say that outright, but yes.
As far
it
as
is
programmer
interesting, though.
happiness goes. There was a time when I was doing some .NET work and some other languages, and I can tell you, I was not happy. It was stressful, and it was not fun. I was doing Ruby at home, and I was doing Ruby on some other work projects, and I'm like, I'm not happy with where I'm at in life. Like it genuinely caused me a lot of stress. But Ruby, I could do, day and night and not get that burnout feeling. And I think that's really important. And that goes a long way with it. Are you happy? Are the improvements that they're doing good enough? They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be the answer to everything, but are they good enough for now?
Right.
And, for me, it's yes. The speed improvements that they're doing in Ruby 3x3, and just from 2.0 to what we have 2.5 now, I mean, it's great. We're getting free performance. And I don't think, there's any issue with it.
Yeah. But there are some people that always like to chase the new. They're always chasing the new language, the new framework. These people never will be satisfied with any kind of performance improvement that you can make to your language.
Yeah. But, we need pioneers like that who are always on the cutting edge.
And I think to have a healthy mind, you need to chase that stuff anyway, at least a little bit. Always learning new language, new something. Think about things new. That's healthy, I feel like. But as far as production code, guess you do what works.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Anything else we want to dive into here before we do picks?
It was interesting what the changes were with file and dir. I seem to always, if it's been a while, I'm always looking those back up again. So I guess there's some change on file.stat, file.exist, and there's that dir children and things. Do you want to speak about that for a second?
It's there's some changes for the dir class. There's, for example, the glob method now takes a new optional keyword argument base. So you can give the base folder to work on, like home and the username. That will be the base. And then we start starting from there. And then there are these children method. And I think this allows you to cover a list of the children directories. I'm not sure how that works. I haven't looked it up. But I assume you can pass it a path, and then you can go over the subpaths inside that path. I think that's how that works.
Yeah. I've used that before on just a couple little scripts that I wrote to manage my environment. Because there's sometimes when I have to seed a database and to just generate a bunch of fake data or whatever, and I'm creating millions of entries in a short period of time, and my log files start to accumulate. So I've used the directory entries or loop it through each child. It was a bit more of a pain back then, but now it looks like it's going to be a pretty easy task but to just then clear out any of the log files to just truncate them. So it definitely has some uses. I don't know if I would throw that into a Rails application just because, that could have some bad things, but.
Mm-hmm.
How about this? I link an article on Skype, and it talks about how Ruby hides some errors from you. I'm curious if you ran into this at some point, because in Ruby 2.5, one of these hidden errors is removed. In particular, is with the coerce method and numeric objects. So sometimes you can do like your object plus 20. That works fine because that calls the plus method on your own class, right? But when you switch it, when you do number plus your object, then what Ruby does in this case, it calls the coerce method with this number. And the problem is if you have an exception there, like the example I give in this article is a typo on your method name, we hide this error. And you will not see that you had a typo. You will not see the no method error exception. You will see something else. And in Ruby 2.5, they are changing this. So we no longer hide the exception. So haven't you run into this kind of hidden exception problems?
Yeah, I haven't run into that one.
Okay. Well, it's good that they're removing it at least. So if we run into it, at least we will see the actual exception and not having to spend a lot of time debugging.
I thought some of the things in here I did think were interesting because I thought they were already here, like integer.square root or integer.squirt, as I like to call it. I just assumed that it was there, but apparently it's being added in this version. So, cool.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys ever did any Java programming, but trying to debug the error messages that Java gives you is a skill set in its own. So it's like super annoying, and like half the files are like things I've never even heard of. So I think any kind of clarification of where the actual error is coming from is always a welcome change.
Yeah.
One other thing I'm seeing in the list here that I just want to call out is description set by thread name equals is now visible on Windows 10. I know a lot of people who are moving their development environments to Windows, and so it's nice to see support there for it as well. Like they're actually looking at that instead of just assuming that, everybody's on Linux or Mac and, oh, darn, sorry, it doesn't work for you. Go get a real computer.
Or install Docker.
Yeah. Which I have to admit, Docker's pretty cool, but yeah.
But, I have used Ruby on Windows a number of times in just like weird situations where I had to create a Windows service that does the periodic tasks periodically. And I tried it in C#. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. Like, I hate my life again. So then I found out about the Win32 OLE or whatever Ruby package. And, you have the Okra, the one-click Ruby application package, which isn't maintained or anything, or at least I don't think it has been in some time. But I was able to do some pretty cool things with those two to create a Ruby service that just runs periodically in the background, and it installs itself as a actual true Windows service.
Oh, nice.
So you can do some pretty cool things with that.
Well, I just think the more we make this kind of thing available to people, the better off the whole community is. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and do some picks.
Do you run your own freelance business? Or maybe you're thinking about picking up some business on the side? Well, then you need FreshBooks. FreshBooks is the quickest and easiest way to get invoices out to your clients. It's easy to use. It works anywhere. available from any device on the desktop, iPhone, iPad, Android, and all of your data is backed up and secure. And it makes it really easy to get organized and get paid. You'll be tracking time, logging expenses, and invoicing your clients in no time. You can also save time billing, freeing up several days per month to focus on the work that you love, and you get paid faster. FreshBooks customers are paid on average 5 days faster because there's a link on the invoice that says pay me now. And it's a great way to grow your business. Plus, FreshBooks is offering a 30-day trial. That's right, 30-day trial if you try them out. So go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Once again, for a 30-day trial, go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section.
Dave, do you want to start us off with picks?
Yeah, sure. I have 2 picks. The first pick is the same pick that I picked last week, but I've gotten more and more into it, and I think it's super cool. And it's CureCoin, which is a type of cryptocurrency that you can do protein folding to actually reward your points. So it's not like the traditional mining for hashes, but you're actually putting your GPU and energy to a good cause to help find cure for stuff like cancer, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and stuff like that through protein folding. So I've been really invested in that with some spare computers that I have over the past several weeks. And so I'm really hyped up about that. And then my second pick is Video.js, which is a JavaScript library for basically displaying. It's an alternate to the HTML5 video, and it just has a bunch of extra little features to it that's really cool that I like. It's an open source library called Video.js, and it's what I'm using to serve up the Drift for Ruby episodes that aren't on YouTube.
Awesome. David, what are your picks?
Yeah, so today I have one pick. It's a conference talk from this year's RubyConf, and it's put on by the Test Double guys. And the thing I love about it, and it fits our conversation today, is they just went over all the things that the Ruby community just rocked over the years. Things that we take for granted or that we could be reminded, things about kindness and creativity and being productive and on and on and on. And so anyway, I've got this great, it's called There's Nothing New Under the Sun, with a little bit of a pun inside of there, a little bit of coding pun for when you see it.
Awesome. We're actually going to have them on the show in a few weeks. So, Eric, what are your picks?
So I have one pick. I'm currently going through the process of finding a new job, and I've found that when you want to work remotely, a lot of companies require basically an online whiteboard test, which is pretty frustrating. A lot of people like me struggle when there's a gun to your head to perform. In fact, that's partially why I'm going remote, is to remove that gun from my head. So there's a person named Stephanie Hurlbert who tweeted, she's a great coder, but she also ran the same experience where she had to do these whiteboard tests, and she's like, look, it has no reflection on how good of a programmer you are. It just has a reflection on how good of a whiteboard programmer you are, I suppose. So she tweeted and said, hey, if anybody knows, if anybody's hiring that does not ask them to go through a whiteboarding deal and instead having like do a take-home test or pair programming or something like that, post a job. So anyway, I'll post a link to that tweet, which I thought was pretty awesome. But I do recommend companies continue to take that approach of, take-home tests are great. Whiteboard tests, typically, they test a very different thing than likely what you're looking for as a developer. So anyway, that's my pick.
Nice. I actually did a session for my Finding a Job course last night, and I had to talk about whiteboard tests because I'm like, you do enough interviews, you're going to run into one. And yeah, I was like, I ranted for about 5 minutes. And then I was like, okay, here's how you do the best you can on them, right? But yeah, I completely agree. We may have to just talk about that on a future episode. I think it'd be interesting.
I'm going to jump in here with a few picks. I've mentioned this before. I'm going to mention it again. Putting together a few new shows. As we speak, the React Indiegogo is up. By the end of the day, the Vue.js and Elixir podcast Indiegogos will be up. So if you want any of those shows, go support them. If you support at $10, I'll send you stickers and you can join the Slack channel. $25, you get a t-shirt and it just goes up from there. If you're interested in sponsoring, you can also get a deal there. I'm just going to point out that given the number of people who have asked for these shows and given the kind of crossover I'm expecting from Ruby Rogues toward Elixir and from JavaScript Jabber toward Vue and React, these are killer deals for sponsorship. And so if you're looking for an opportunity to sponsor an episode or many episodes, go pick it up. I think the highest level package, you wind up spending about what was it, $150 per episode, and typically for a podcast that gets 5,000 to 10,000 downloads per episode, I'm charging at least double that. And so if you're looking for sponsorship opportunities on those shows, then definitely go pick them up. I'm structuring it such that all of the sponsorships can occur within the first 30 episodes, and that way I can, and I'll work with you. I'll make it worth your while, but, then I can just start telling people, okay, if you want to continue sponsoring based on traffic after that, then we can just pick it up at a particular date. But, this is a way for me to see how much interest there is, as well as cover some of the production costs before it, I actually have to pay for it out of sponsorships because I don't have sponsorships for these shows right now. So if you want to support the shows or at least let me know that you're interested, just go donate $1 so that I have a tick mark for you, right? And we'll see how far we get on that. But anyway, we'll have all of the Indiegogos up on the show notes so that people can, go and support the shows. And then besides that, I am finalizing details on React Dev Summit, and that's going to be February 26th through March 2nd. So calling out to that. And then one last thing, I'm not sure if this is going to come out before CES. If it does, I'm going to be in Las Vegas from January 7th through the 12th, and I'm probably going to have a meetup. So if you go to devchat.tv/events, you can see when the meetup is. I'll also be in Atlanta the end of January, beginning of February, and Oakland that first week of February. So I'll have meetups there too. So if you're in any of those areas, go to devchat.tv/events and you can see when we're doing that. So sorry to plug all my stuff, but I've got a lot of stuff coming up and going on, and I want to meet as many people as possible and find ways to interact with you. And so these are all of kind of the best ways to do that. So anyway, Jesus, what are your picks?
Yeah, I would like to mention some great Ruby gems. I like, for example, Awesome Print. I really like it because it allows you can use it in IRB or Pry, and it colors and formats your hashes and your arrays, so you can more clearly see your output if you are working on Pry or IRB. Then I also like Table Print. And Table Print allows you to format some data, some objects. What it does, it reads the methods on your object, and then it creates a table. So you can see a very nice table on your terminal. You can use this for Rails objects and things like that. And then I also like another gem is called Rails ERD. And what this does is it reads your schema file for a Rails project, and then it generates a picture like a UML diagram that shows you the tables with their columns, their relationships, and things like that. And this is very useful if you are jumping to a new project and you want to see how things are connected together. And if I may, I would also like to mention my site where you can find Ruby tutorials. It's called rubyguides.com. I have over 50 Ruby tutorials there for all skill levels.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, yeah, I'll just +1 you on the rubyguides.com. Folks, go check it out. And if people want to follow you on Twitter, GitHub, where do they go?
Yeah, my Twitter handle is MatthewGM right now. And also GitHub is also MatthewGM.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming and adding to our conversation on Ruby 2.5. It's coming out on Christmas 2017. I always think that's cool. It's like, hey, here's a Christmas present. But keep an eye out for that, and we're all looking forward to Ruby 3. So
yeah, thanks for having me.
Yep, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up, and we will catch everyone next week.
All right, see you later.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.